French Revolution was the first major political revolution in human history. It took place from the year 1789 to 1799. It all started when King Louis XIV began spending massive amounts of the people's tax money.
So, the French Revolution was actually not a revolution. Some people don't know this, but it was actually it was a state-supported underground movement that really the French government supported right from the start. And they were like, you know what? Let's just overthrow ourselves because that's what we do. We're French, right? Why not? And so they did that, and a lot of the Italians at the time laughed at them because that's what Italians do. They just laugh at the French sometimes, and because they're better. But that's just a personal thing, and other people who are Italian believe that. So yeah, the French Revolution really it was bloody, dark. When I was younger and it was still going on, it was sad, you know, when you have revolts like that, you know, it's like people are against each other, Viva la France, you know, and all those sayings. They just, yeah. But I'm really glad they've resolved it and they're moving forward. They got a great soccer team now, or football, as we like to say, in the football community. And if anybody who's playing football would like to run cross country.
This guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Let's rewind.
King Louis XIV built the Palace of Versailles along with a lavish garden and went to war with England in the 7 Years' War. Later on, King Louis XVI began funding the American Revolution and continued spending people's money on lavish parties and absurd luxuries.
The French Revolution began in 1789 with unrest of the peasants and the urban poor. They were significantly taxed just for living, essentially, and they were struggling because they would work for maybe a year to be able to afford food, for example, bread, because it costs so much. So they were being significantly taxed. There was cattle disease. They struggled because of the cost of food and bread, so they may not even be able to grow their own food or raise cattle.
French Revolution lasts about a decade, so that's 10 years for those that can't follow along. So 1789 to 1799. But the causes come in long before that with absolute monarchs that overtax a class of people that can't afford it. There's 3 levels coming out of France, really, States General. We have a lower class, we have a middle class of people who have a skill, and then we have an upper class when we're looking at religious figures and government officials. The top 2 classes were not taxed. The bottom class had to pay for all the taxes. We have a monarchy who believes they should contain and always have control. Those are going to lead to the French Revolution, the storming of the Bastille, the guillotining of monarchs.
On June 17th, 1789, the Third Estate formed the National Assembly, a governmental body that was independent from the king and served as a blueprint for future revolutionary governments. On July 14th, 1789, the people of Paris got tired of being hungry, so they stormed the Bastille, a medieval fortress, armory, and political prison. This was symbolic of the marker of the beginning of the French Revolution.
This revolution was so important because it was the first time that the people of France, like any civilization, had actually overthrown their ruler, their king, killed their king. So they set their life savings on a loaf of bread. They were starving, they were mad, they were angry. So naturally, they overthrew the king and they took this 32-foot structure and they put the king's head in like this board and this pound blade just came chopping off his head, slit right off of the neck, and would just come down really quick. They pull the lever, release the string, and it would come right down. I mean, it was horrible. Like, you can see it right here. This is what it looks like. You have the blade, and then they put their head in there. I mean, that's what they did because they were so mad. They were starving. They couldn't do anything. They were being taxed so much. I mean, when I say they spent their life savings, they spent every penny they had.
On August 26, 1789, the National Assembly issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. This document marked the beginning of what we now refer to as the moderate phase of the French Revolution that lasted from 1789 to 1792. This, however, would not last.
They are going to be one of the first countries to overthrow and kill their king. Basically, France continues for the next few decades trying to come up with a new form of government, whether it's a monarchy again, another absolute monarchy, a constitutional monarchy.
After a series of executions were carried out by the French government, Maximilien Robespierre declared that terror is the order of the day. On September 5th, 1793, this officially kicked off what we now know as the Reign of Terror. The Reign of Terror consisted of thousands of executions by guillotine against those who were perceived to be against the revolution. During this time, France also declared war on Austria out of fear of potential Austrian invasion.
During a large portion of the French Revolution, France was also going to war with the country of Austria. The whole purpose of the war was because the new French government, the National Assembly, feared an impending Austrian invasion. Despite Robespierre being against it, they declared war on Austria. The war lasted for the entirety of the revolution until it was eventually put to an end by Napoleon Bonaparte, when he, along with 3 other French armies, finally defeated the Austrians, and he eventually put an end to the revolution.
The Reign of Terror ended when Robespierre was sentenced to be executed by members of his own radical party. On July 28, 1794, Maximilien Robespierre was sent to the guillotine, and with that, the Reign of Terror had ended. After the death of Robespierre, a more moderate political group called the Thermidorians took control. They then created a new government called the Directory. This new government's purpose was to prevent power from ever falling into the hands of a single individual ever again. The radicals that supported Robespierre were now facing political persecution, usually in the form of execution. This new moderate approach to government allowed for a royalist insurrection in Paris, which failed due to the military efforts of Napoleon Bonaparte. After his success in Paris, Napoleon went on to almost single-handedly win France the war against the Austrians. Napoleon was sent off to Egypt before he finally returned to France, staging a military coup in which he forced the relatively unpopular government to write a new brand of constitution that essentially made him a dictator.